Welcome to Season 4 of the Changing Earth podcast with Sara F. Hathaway, blending survival fiction and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sara F. Hathaway.
Hello, and welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. This is episode number 161, Season 4, episode 37. So we're coming square into the end of the book, and just a couple chapters left to go. Always the exciting stuff when when you're reading it, you don't want to put it down, but we got a little bit more content to cover, so we're going to cover it a little bit slower, and then I've got a cool surprise coming up for you for the last episode, which will be on September 4th. I want to just preface this episode with, it's time to start thinking, stay vigilant in your survival thinking right now. There's a lot of interesting things going on with our planet right now that they're not really talking too much about. And for me, who's somebody who's really concerned about possible Earth changes and what we're going to have to adapt to in the future to survive on this planet, it's kind of disconcerting. So I've had my eyes wide open trying to, peruse through all the information I can on exactly what's going on right now, because there are so many earthquakes happening, so much volcanic activity happening, so many oddities that are once in a lifetime event, once in a century event, and they all seem to be happening right now. And so I hate to I don't want to be a fear monger or anything, but I do want you to be alert, to be aware of what's going on in your area, but also what's going on globally and how that could impact our daily lives. So just stay vigilant. There's a great site that I like to watch. It's called Skywatch Media, and I'm hoping to have the gentleman who hosts it on my podcast this upcoming season. However, we'll see how that works out, but Skywatch Media produces some great information on kind of what's been happening in the past week, the past couple weeks, and he puts out his YouTube videos constantly. I think he does it on a weekly basis or every 2 weeks. So great videos. Skywatch Media, head on over there and just kind of see what's going on and stay vigilant on it, please. Also stay abreast of any social unrest that's happening in your area. It seems like it's kind of billowing up again, and people are becoming more and more isolated and just really set against one side or the other. And I really hope that's just media exploitation, trying to show us, because I don't even watch the news that much anymore, honestly. My son's been home off school. I hate to watch it with him around. It's just a bunch of talking heads, talking nonsense, and arguing with each other a lot of the time. However, that leaves gaps open that we're not really paying attention to a lot of stuff. And so I want you to remain vigilant on just, what is happening in your area, again, both naturally and then with the people. What's the vibe of the people? What's going on there? So stay active, stay attentive, make sure you're shoring up your preps. It's been tough times on a lot of us, myself included, so I've been using up a lot of my preps. So we got to remember, when you have a little bit extra, you can manage a little bit extra. Make sure you are always shoring up your preps. Go back through what you have. Make sure your go bags are ready to go. I was very proud of my family. I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast last time, but we were evacuated again. And we had less than a 5-minute evac time for a family of 4 and 2 dogs. So start challenging yourself. If you had to leave tomorrow, what would your time look like? So the first time we had to do it, we had like a 10-minute score. Second time we had to do it, we're less than 5 minutes. We're out the door. Everybody's calm, cool, and collected. So it really helps to stage up some of these events and try and test your family and see what you can get down to. Also, it's super important to be maintaining your fitness goals. Without your body, without your health, you're not going anywhere. So make sure you're maintaining your fitness goals. Get out there, start getting active. Please head on over to Changing Earth podcast group on Facebook. Put up some of your fitness stuff. What are your fitness goals? Some pictures of you guys doing activities. I'd love to see it. I'm going to try and get some up. It's kind of difficult for me because everybody I know is participating with me, so who to take pictures of what I'm doing. But I'll try to get some up myself, and we'll get that rolling because I really want to encourage you guys to do it, and I want you guys to encourage me to keep going. I've been kind of spotty with my jiu-jitsu training just because it's a big mental challenge. I've had a lot of mental challenges going on in my life, and I kind of have a switch point in my head, and once I know I'm past that switch point, I don't like to engage in physical confrontations anymore because, you know, I don't want to hurt anybody or do anything stupid. So it's just kind of a point that I know that I have inside my body. So I've been dealing with that. But however, still training every day, still putting in 2 hours, still making it happen. You know, I can see the results physically. I'm loving it, and just really, really heals my soul up a lot. But also I know what my body can do. I know where it can go. I know where it can take me. I know what I'm capable of. I know how many strikes I can take before, you know, I don't want to do it anymore kind of thing. So you got to figure that out too. And I encourage you to go do that. Please come over to the Changing Earth podcast group on Facebook and share some of that stuff. We'd love to see it. So Dark Days in Denver is coming. It's at the editor, and I'm waiting for it ever so patiently. I did do the back of the book, so I'm going to go ahead and read that to you. If you're watching me on camera, it's a little awkward, but I'm going to go ahead and read that to you. So as the Earth continues to unleash a series of natural disasters, at the surviving inhabitants, as the Earth continues to unleash a series of natural disasters at the surviving inhabitants, Erica finds herself hiding from the federal forces aiming to eliminate her. Rapidly trying to adjust to new circumstances, the refugees from the Earth's fury spread out into new geographic locations, searching for someplace safe to live. The federal government's grip on its lands tightens as food becomes scarce and overpopulation intensifies. Fighting for control of the West, the world is turned upside down as the unthinkable happens to the planet and to Erica's family. Is this the end of life as we know it? Who will survive to continue to fight for the freedom of the American people? So that's what I've worked up so far for my book back, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, you know, I won't make too many changes, but that's what I've got worked up for now, and I'm really excited about that book coming out. Actually, I have pretty much, I've been working hard, I'm going to tell you, on the next book too, because the story's just rolling. So I don't know what the expected release date is for that or anything, but I do want you to know it's been on the burner. I need to take a moment to thank my Patreon members. Without you guys, I could not continue to do this show at all. You know, things financially for me have just gotten really, really, really tight, and we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but I know with your guys' support that we will be bringing this show to you every week. So thank you so much for taking the time to go over and support the show. You know, it really helps. Every bit really helps. So if you guys out there listening can take a moment, head on over to Patreon, www.patreon.com/Changing Earth. That's www.patreon.com/Changing Earth. Take a moment, head on over there, get signed up for at least the $3 program. I really try to enhance the content for the members and really make it worth your while. You know, I'm not somebody who's out there just, you know, asking for support when I'm not working my tail off for it. It's something that I pride myself on, and I give everything that I do in my life 110% of every bit of effort, or else I'm not going to do it at all. It's either all or nothing. So I really try hard to make those rewards very you know, substantial for my Patreon members, because I super appreciate your support for the show, and it's honestly what's keeping the show going at this point, because without your support I couldn't afford to run the show anymore. It's not just time in, I have to pay for a whole bunch of stuff that goes along with this show, and so your contributions is literally what's making it happen right now. So thank you so much for that, because I'm still here doing what I love, and I can't thank you enough for that. So last week on Battle for the South, Matthew Tweed was finally eliminated in this twisty, turny kind of story with this cool turn of events. So I really like how I put that together. There's times when you write things and you go back and you're like, did I write that? That was really cool. That was pretty good. So I'm definitely one of those that it turned out really cool. This week, Vince and Erica are trying to make their way out of Las Vegas. So everything's done. They're trying to get out of there. And so we're going to see what they encounter on the way. in these long-term survival situations, or if you're out in the wilderness, things like that, you are going to be faced with medical emergencies. And here today to talk to us about the basics of disaster medicine is Kevin Reiter. I love Kevin. Always enjoy talking with him. It's always a fun time. Can't wait to finally meet him in person. Last time I got the opportunity, I had to go black belt test instead of go take advantage of that opportunity. So hopefully that opportunity will present itself before too long. But Kevin's got some great advice on where you can get started so that you are prepared to handle these emergency medical situations in a disaster setting. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into Chapter 37 of Battle for the South. Chapter 37. Star watched Vince leave. More and more refugees started gathering around the warehouses. They were mostly women and children, 10 years of age and older. They were being diverted away from the fighting. The train would take them away from this horrible place. Staff Sergeant White, Greg, Mitchell, and young Carmen stayed diligently by the essential controls to the gardens. If anyone tampered with the chemicals, the gardens could be wiped out in a snap. Star went with Penny and Jen to go help Alex organize people and start loading them onto the train. Once Star had Penny and Jen set up, she went back to check on the guys. Sergeant Walker and Sergeant Julie Pontever met her en route. Star thought Julie looked great. She was in her mid-30s now, and her brown hair was tied back tight. She was strong and looked healthy. Julie and Sergeant Walker had formed a relationship years ago, and they were still together. After greeting each other warmly, Sergeant Walker informed her that he had gotten Erica and Bennett through the gate. Star told him about the dilemma with Nancy. Sergeant Walker and Pontever knew that was going to be an issue, but they weren't sure how to handle it themselves. Pontever went to go help Penny, Jen, and Alex while Sergeant Walker accompanied Star back to the control room. Staff Sergeant White was leaving when they approached. He turned and looked back for a moment before rounding the corner of the warehouse. "I know that guy," Sergeant Walker commented. "Staff Sergeant White? He's with us, Sergeant," Star explained. "He's with the feds," Walker insisted. "You must have him confused with someone else," she explained as they entered the warehouse. "I'm telling you, Star, he's with the feds," Walker explained. "Who?" Greg asked, overhearing their conversation. "That guy that just left. Staff Sergeant White?" "I saw him here a little over a month ago," Sergeant Walker said. "They flew him in on a helicopter." Everyone was deep in thought, unsure what to do. Suddenly, the noise outside the warehouse grew louder and the sound of gunfire filled the air. Mitchell went to go look. "The feds are pressing this way," Mitchell commented. "What did he say before he left?" Star asked Greg. "Who?" Greg was confused. "Staff Sergeant White. What did he say before he left?" Star wondered. "He mumbled something about how we were going to lose the gardens," Greg answered honestly. Star realized there was a mole amongst them. What the repercussions of that would be, she didn't know. But they would have to start changing plans quickly. Sergeant Walker was thinking the same. "We've got to move the civilians," they said in unison, looking up at one another. "And I've got to warn my folks," Star added. "Where did Staff Sergeant White go, Greg?" "He said he had to find Vince and Erica," he replied, realizing the plot White was weaving. "I don't know what the feds are planning to do here, Greg," the sergeant worried. "You might want to think about moving your people out of here. I know we need this food, but it's not worth your life." Sergeant Walker bounced out the door to go get the civilians to a safe area on the other side of the train. Star ran out into the crowd of refugees defending the warehouses. She went to the edge and tucked inside a building. There were refugees in there, bravely defending against incoming federal soldiers looking for a flanking position. She went to the back and slowly made her way behind enemy lines with a group of refugees that were going to try the same flanking tactic on the feds. How will I ever find them, she wondered. The refugee line began to surge as they were joined by armored mercs and militiamen that could best the firepower of the feds. From the shadows, she recognized the federal unit going by to help bolster the federal lines. Her ex-boyfriend was in that crew. She thought she recognized him amongst them, but she would never be sure. Turning her head towards her destination, she saw the Luxor looming in the distance. Hatred for the place still welled inside of her. It took all of Erica and Bennett's strength to hoist Matthew Tweed's bulging corpse off Vince. Vince took a deep breath and started coughing. "Are you okay?" Erica asked. "I'm fine," Vince answered. That's good, because you look like shit, Erica said sarcastically. Both of you, she said, looking to her mom. All of you, she concluded as she looked at Sergeant Jensen. Dexter ran into the room and hugged his grandma tightly as tears ran down her face. Erica helped Vince to his feet and went and joined Dexter in loving up her mom. She could barely keep her tears in check, but there was no time to celebrate yet. Thanks, Nancy, Vince told her, hugging them all tightly. That was badass, Mom, Erica commented. Now we know where you get it from, Cupcake, Bennett laughed. Jensen chuckled as well, holding his arm. Bennett put a quick field dressing on the wound and made sure everyone was ready to move. As they exited, Clint approached. How y'all doing? He asked nonchalantly. We could have used some help, Vince commented. I can see that, Clint said. Clint? What the hell are you doing here? Erica wondered, confused by his appearance. You know this guy, Erica? Bennett asked, looking at the chains on his feet. Long story, but yeah, Erica answered. Bennett took out his gun. To everyone's surprise, he pointed it at Clint, and they held their breath. He pointed it down at the chain stretched between his feet and fired. It broke. Clint cracked his left eye open just a little and felt around on his body. Then he looked down between his feet. Hey, thanks, mister, he elated. We can't have you slowing us down, Bennett concluded, heading for the back staircase. They made their way onto the street and formed a circle around Nancy as they fought their way back toward the warehouses. Gunfire seemed to come from every direction. They were getting close as they turned down another alley. Staff Sergeant White was there. Staff Sergeant White, Bennett called. Why aren't you at your post? I have one more thing to do before my mission is accomplished, the staff sergeant answered with a faraway look in his eyes. What are you talking about, son? The mission is not over until the compound is ours, Bennett replied, confused. White pulled out his gun and pointed it at Erica. Don't do it, Sebastian, Vince called to the man he had come to know as a friend. I'm so sorry, Vince. I liked you. But she has to die for the good of our great union, he explained, slowly tensing his hand. There was a gunshot. Erica stood motionless as her family stared at her. When they looked back to White, he had slumped forward and blood poured from his mouth. He spoke into a device on his wrist. Las Vegas is compromised. Target has not been destroyed. Then his breath left his body. Star came out of the shadows. There were short-lived hugs and thank yous, but they had to keep moving. Pressing steadily toward the warehouses, suddenly there was thunder in the sky. The deafening noise halted the violence in the streets. Looking up, Erica knew the sound. It was fighter jets. They were leaving Las Vegas. Once in the air, they circled around and rained bullets all over the city streets. The team broke out into a full-on sprint as people on the ground began to scatter. The planes shot at mercs, militia, civilians, and their own federal troops with little concern. Erica's heart skipped a beat as they circled one last time, sending missiles and bombs exploding furiously everywhere. Erica looked back to see the Luxor and the Strip erupting in flames. As she turned around, the gardens exploded in front of them. Erica watched as a crowd of people flew through the air like rag dolls as the bombs rained down and shattered the city. They kept running. They had to get back to the rendezvous point. Suddenly, boom! Another plane dropped a bomb directly in front of them. It blew them off their feet, and their heads rang with the sound. Clint lay dead at Erica's feet. We'll never make it, Bennett yelled above the deafening noise. Quick, in here, he yelled, as they ran into a restaurant. There was a walk-in freezer in the back. Bennett turned it off and told them all to get in. The building shook as the world outside exploded. They prayed in the corner. Loyalties are revealed as White attempts to complete his mission. Taking refuge in a freezer, the group prays it will keep them safe. And Vince and Jensen have some serious injuries here at this point. So, I wanted to really sit down and address how we can learn about disaster medicine, how we can be prepared, because this is so important. Honestly, I'm not going to lie here. It's probably an area of my personal preparedness area that is lacking. Even though I have been certified as a EMT in the past, it's something, it's not like riding a bike. You got to stay up to speed. You got to stay practicing these things. And honestly, I really haven't. So I'm not afraid to admit it. And that's why I'm always happy to learn more about it. And here to teach us more about it today is Kevin Reiter. Kevin is a wilderness survival instructor. Kevin has had an avid interest in the outdoors since his father took him fishing at age 3 and has continued to pursue many outdoor activities for over 45 years, such as hiking, camping, fishing, trapping, and hunting. While serving as a reconnaissance specialist in the U.S. military, he started his diving career and holds certifications of Dive Master and Master Scuba Diver with over 15 specialties. For most of his life, he has not only been continually learning, but has used that knowledge about nature and the outdoors to teach others. Kevin has taught members of search and rescue teams, participated in numerous SAR missions, given lectures on diving medicine at university hospitals, volunteered as an EMT and firefighter in his local community, served as an assistant scoutmaster with a local Boy Scout troop, and actively participates in educational podcasts and videos for EMS providers and the preparedness community. In 2010, Kevin was certified by the National Board of Diving and Hyperbaric Medical Technology as a Diver Medical Technician DMT. At that time, he was one of less than 2,000 people to ever receive this certification in the United States. If you'd like to learn more about Kevin and his awesome upcoming programs, please head over to www.wildsafety.com. That's www.wildsafety.com. Let's go ahead and welcome Kevin to the show. Today, I am back with Kevin Ryder. He is a field medic. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We finally got it all lined up, so I'm stoked to have you here.
Awesome, Sarah. Thanks for having me back again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, let the audience know what you're all about, where they can find you, things, projects that you're working on, stuff like that.
Sure. So I'm Kevin Ryder. I am the CEO and training director for the Wilderness Safety Institute here in Texas. I've had probably somewhere around 50 years in training in various different things, all involving the outdoors in some aspect or some little way, medical, outdoors, emergency, things like that, Boy Scout, EMT, wilderness medicine, just all kinds of stuff. Find out more at my website, which is wildsafety.com. My bio has a decent amount of it. I don't like bragging, so there's a lot that's not there. But,
right.
Yeah.
I'll have read your bio, too, so we're good to go with that.
I'm just this guy, you know?
It works for me. You know, I was just saying before the show that my medical side is something that, you know, I trained to be an EMT, got the basics of it, but, you know, I'm always looking to improve that area because it's kind of freaky. Pandemics, you know, like injuries where you're going to watch your spouse bleed out or something, that's a little intimidating to me, you know. And so when I learned to be an EMT, we were selling rafting photos down in Southern California, and we're girls in the cutoffs and our bathing suit tops, you know, with the misters on because it's all hot. This guy on this motorcycle comes by, his jaw drops, and he wrecked his bike, like just destroyed it across the road.
Typical guy thing when bikinis are involved.
Right? So I run over there, and I'm like, this dude's life is going to be in my hands now. Like, I don't know if I can do this, you know? It was just like that moment between learning and doing. And I was like, oh, I don't know. So luckily the fire department was right there and I didn't have to deal with it. But it was a real eye-opener into
it can be really intimidating unless you live in that space and do it, you know, pretty consistently.
Yeah, very intimidating stuff. So I was like, well, okay, we're going to have Kevin on the show. We're going to go through some basics of what we need to know for, you know, training that person in our group who's going to be our medical provider, and just kind of talk about some of the things we should really be worried about rather than maybe some of the things that are flashy and we think they're going to be cool to learn. So
exactly.
So that's kind of where I wanted to start. So what are some of those absolute basics where we should begin with like our learning lineup?
So I would always start with planning. Planning can keep you out of trouble. It can prevent accidents from happening, and it can ensure you have the right equipment if you need to use that equipment when something does happen, right? So having a well-stocked first aid kit, either a group bag, individual first aid kits or IFAKs, knowing how to use what's in them, knowing where everything is in all of the different kits, because if something happens, In an emergency, you get tunnel vision, and you typically tend to forget unless you practice with everything. So practice, in my mind, is part of the planning. It's leading up to the real event, so that's part of the planning phase. Excuse me. Other than that, going back to the basics, learning how to do a proper assessment so you can find out what the problem is if it's not readily apparent by looking at somebody. Learning how to, doing an assessment, touching somebody, and getting over the guy touching a girl, I don't know, or a girl touching a guy. You have to put your hands on somebody to find out what the problem is. If you're talking to trauma, medical, whole different story. But learn the basics of an assessment and get that down, because that's going to dictate what your treatment's going to be, right? You got to find the problem to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then, next to that would be documentation. And I don't mean documentation to give EMS when they arrive on scene, although that would help. But if you're going to have a patient that let's say it's your wife, and some event causes EMS not to be able to get to you, or help to be able to get to you for a couple days, document what you find so you can see if is there a pattern. Hey, I took her vitals 3 days ago, and her blood pressure was 128 over 82. And now it's 146 over 112. What's causing that blood pressure to elevate? What's the pulse? What's the respirations? All the basic vital signs. Those are key indicators that there could be a problem over time. And if you don't have any documentation to refer to say, hey, are they slowly going up or down over time? You're not going to be able to remember with everything else going on. Your vitals are one thing. The first thing you forget. Oh, what was that BP again? I just took it 5 minutes ago and I can't remember. What was the pulse? How many respirations? So documentation is really key.
Especially if you're like in a super high stress environment. I mean, forget it. You're going to be worried about what's going on around you, and there's no way you're going to be remembering numbers like that.
And if you're trying to manage people as well who are helping you, I mean, you need documentation. Whether you write it down or have somebody do it, it needs to get written down so you can refer back to it.
So that's something we should definitely have in all of our go bags. And silly me, the author, who's always has a notebook and a pen, I don't think I have. I definitely do in my EDC kit, but I don't think I actually have one in my go bag that is, just a big fat notebook and a pen.
They make these Write in the Rain pens and the Write in the Rain pads, and those are awesome because, like I always say, accidents don't happen under perfect conditions. It's going to be dark. It's going to be raining, snowing, environmental. It could be, a toss-up. But if it's raining out and you're trying to write something down and the paper's all wet, it's not going to work out too good. So, a Write in the Rain pen and a pad come in really handy. And they're not so expensive. You're not going to go bankrupt buying a couple of them to put on all your kits. They're really good to have.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's a great point. We do the same thing with our maps, laminate them and whatnot so that they're not going to get just destroyed when you've got them out there.
And that brings up a good point, too. You can do the same thing with some of the basic, make little cheat cards or quick reference cards. So in that, when you're remembering, okay, OPQRST or decap BTLS or all the basic things that are very simple once you've done them 1,000 times, but when you get excited you tend to forget. Make little quick reference cards for yourself and laminate them. Keep them in the Write in the Rain pad, so when you go to document, they're all right there.
That's a great call.
And keep them. Like I said, make multiple copies of them. Keep them in your vehicle, all your kits. Probably going to be too big for your wallet unless you print them really, really small so you can't read them.
And you need your magnifying glass?
So assessment, learning a basic assessment is key, and practicing, documentation, and then learning the basics. What are you going to encounter pretty much every day? Like you're not going to have a chainsaw through the arm as an everyday occurrence.
Yeah, fair enough.
What are the things on a daily basis you're going to come across? Blisters.
Well, a lot of people will probably be doing knives too, like the little knife cuts and stuff like that.
So because, blisters, right? Minor burns.
Yep.
Small cuts, abrasions, contusions. You're a mom. how many times did you have to do basic first aid on your kids as they were growing up?
Right, skin knees, yep, everything.
So what are the
Running
things you're
into
going to need in your
poles.
kit? Yeah, so the majority of what you're going to need in your kit is basic items. Roller gauze pads, Band-Aids, tape. You
What do
definitely...
you recommend for like a fever type situation? Because kids get fevers a lot, and they have a lot of products that are liquid for children, and so I put those in there, but they go bad. The liquid goes bad faster than any kind of pills or tablets or anything. So for even on an adult level, what would you recommend for like a fever type situation?
It depends. My big question is what's causing the fever.
Right. Okay.
If you don't know what's causing it, how are you going to control it? You might control the symptoms temporarily, but unless you fix the underlying problem, the fever is going to be there. The fever is being caused by the body reacting to something. Your job is to find out what that something is, and then when you do, is it something you're able to fix?
Right. Fair enough.
Do they have some kind of infection? That because they had a small cut and no one found it because they didn't do a proper assessment and now it's infected? Is that what's causing the fever? Or is it something
and a lot
different?
of times they'll even advise to let the fever run its course nowadays. You don't want it to go up too high, obviously, because that's like brain boil. But a lot of times they're like back off on treating the fever, till it gets up to like dangerous.
It depends on what the cause is.
Right?
In
yeah,
children,
when it's your kid, you're like, dude, I want it to end right now.
Right. So in children, it could be, any number of things. And as we get older, it still could be any number of things. But again, going back to the assessment and doing your what happened? What were you doing? What have you been doing for the past couple of days? What's changed? What have you been doing differently? Changes in diet? What are your allergies? You have to be, you have to play detective and find out what changed to cause this fever. Are they just sick? Do they have the flu? You find out by asking questions and again documenting the answers. If you ask them the same questions the next day and the answers change, why did they change?
Right.
So now you have a mental issue to work with. Why can't they remember anything? Excuse me. Is it because of the fever? Something else going on? You don't know. So all the more reason and it all goes back to the basics. Because we're not doctors. We can't fix everything in the field without, and we have to know, hey, this is above my head. I can't fix this. I need some help. How do you get that help? It depends on your environment.
You better have a doctor in your group.
Right.
Yeah.
But knowing the basics is the majority of it. Keeping a level head, not panicking, not overreacting, not assuming the worst. But just, monitor, find out what's going on, sick or not sick, right? If it's a boo-boo, you fix it with a Band-Aid, hand them the Band-Aid, and have them fix it. You're done. Now, if they got cut by a rusty something or other, have you had a tetanus shot? Again, document that.
When was the last
and
time?
then you're going to know, hey, this is, a really high probability of infection. You need to watch it. So maybe you want to clean it out extra special before you put the Band-Aid on. Maybe put some Silvasorb or something else that you have on it, just as an added precaution. Check the Band-Aid, take it off every couple hours, put a new one on. Maybe take it off, let some air get to it. Air helps it heal, right? So take the Band-Aid off for a couple hours, let it heal, put it back on to keep all the dirt and stuff from getting back in there, wash it out regularly.
That's the challenging part, right? Like when you're out in the wilderness, finding like that clean environment to maintain things like that can be really, really tough in itself.
Right. So you have to be extra special, careful, and mindful of that, because I've seen blisters take down people, these big, strong, hunking guys, and they have a blister on their foot and they can't move. That's from a blister. Or say somebody has a boil. A boil can be excruciatingly painful. And, that can be incapacitating depending on where it is. So how do you treat a boil? Do you know about, putting really hot water on a washcloth?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So that's all basic stuff.
Using plantain is really good for using in a compress on them too. So,
right. So it's usually the little things that become the big problems when they go left untreated. So learning how to do the basic things, take a Stop the Bleed class. Most places now you can get them for free, especially for groups. they're free.
Right.
How long does it
Yeah,
take to
because
bleed
all the
out of a femoral
activities
artery?
and stuff,
Right.
like 3 minutes, right? It doesn't take
Exactly.
very long, right?
And
Yeah.
that doesn't need any advanced. It's basic direct pressure, stop the bleed. Right.
Yep.
That's all basic things. And then obviously you want to evacuate them to get further care. We're not going to try and stitch them up on the scene. We're not going to do that. Stay to the basics, stop the bleed, assess them, find out what happened, document everything, and then make that decision. Do they need to be evacuated? Are they good to go where they are? If you're using a tourniquet or a Kerlix or Quick Clot, pretty much they're going to need to be evacuated. It's beyond your level of care. You need to make that decision early and get things in motion. But recognizing what you can take care of and what you can't is a big thing too. Right.
And if you can't get them any place for help, I mean,
some things we can't fix. I mean, it boils down to that. It's the hard reality. We can't fix everything.
You just try and burn it like Rambo style? Probably not, because that's like
the first tenet in medicine is do no harm.
There you go.
I'm not going to advocate, putting a burning thing on someone to seal a wound when you can very easily slap a whole bunch of gauze pads on it, wrap it up with roller gauze,
Fair enough.
Watch it, keep it clean, keep it from getting infected. That's all basic things. You can learn all that in a basic first aid class. Which brings my next thing to training. Basic first aid class is anywhere from between 4 and let's say 6 or 8 hours. CPR. That's going to cover a good majority of the things that can go wrong. Even in an advanced first aid course, which is 15 to 19 hours, depending on what agency, who teaches it, what's involved. You're talking 15 hours, maybe 19 hours, let's say 20 hours.
Yeah.
It's still all basic things, even though they call it the advanced first aid course. I've taught that for 20 years. It's still really basic things. And it's designed for things that we can treat at home without having to worry about calling 911. If you need that option, it's good to have. But knowing that also builds your confidence level. So now you're not going to panic. You're not going to make the people around you panicky because you appear panicked. And as long as you maintain a calm, cool, collected, hey, no problem, I got this. Hey, how you doing? You appear calm. Everyone around you is going to be, okay, cool. He's a professional. They know what they're doing. Yeah. I can relax. He's in good hands. Right. But if you get in there all panicky, what's going to happen? Everyone around you is going to go through
because they're not confident in you.
Your patient, their blood pressure and pulse are going to go through the roof.
It's true.
They're not going to be confident. What are you doing? Don't touch me. I don't want you to, So.
Yeah.
And that confidence comes with practice.
And really, if you have like an established mag group, you should have more than one person who knows this stuff. Like
exactly.
You can't just have one person who's trained. So everybody should basically have the basic level. And then you could have a couple more who are those more advanced medics, right?
In the military, we used to cross-train, so we'd have our primary in whatever specialty, and they would cross-train at least 2 other people. So if something ever happened to our team medic, we knew enough to save him, or if there was enough people that were hurt, we could help him, do his job. But in a small group, you want to cross-train at least a couple people. What happens if, someone didn't make it to the rally point? Now you're down a person. And that person happens to be your medic or your comms guy. No one knows how to set up a radio. So, cross-training is key.
Yeah. Yeah, that's coming up next season, my communications interview. So
cool.
I'm like, all right, we got to get this figured out a little more. Yep. So I'm trying to seal up holes in my game plan right now, basically through my interviews. Yeah.
Cool.
So we talked a little bit about the magnificence of suturing before the show. So why don't you go ahead? Yeah, no, I'm bringing it up. Share your feelings on it because it's really important. A lot of people think, just close it up, and it's not appropriate sometimes.
So I am not a huge advocate. In fact, I'm an advocate against suturing. The main reason is because there's so many things people need to and should know before they suture. suturing is the sexy thing. Everyone wants to go out and buy suture kits from Amazon without learning
to do it with paracord.
Yeah. So the things that people don't learn, like the anatomy and physiology, you know, finding out, hey, I need to be careful in my selection of suture materials because if they have an allergic reaction to the material, which can happen, now what do you do? Different suturing methods. And again, leave that to the people who have been trained, who do it day in, day out. Another thing is, suturing is to make a wound look pretty. It's not specifically to stop bleeding. Unless you're going
to keep out infection.
Unless you're going to be suturing an artery, which is a whole different story. But again, that goes back to stop the bleed. You can pack it with Quick Clot or Celox, direct pressure. Now you've stopped the bleed. You didn't fix the underlying problem, but you stopped the life threat to now get them to help. Right. Suturing is not something that should be done in the field. It's not something to be done to stop the bleeding. There's more effective and simple methods that you can learn in a Stop the Bleed course or in other small, short courses that are sometimes even more effective than suturing. The other thing that people tend to forget, suturing hurts. If you come at me with a needle and don't first numb up the area, you're not going to touch me. And if you keep trying to touch me because you think you're going to be saving the day, you're going to be hurting more than me. That's all I'm going to say.
Right?
Suturing is not something that should be done in the field unless that person is extremely, extremely skilled and experienced and obviously trained to that level. The average person who has an aid bag who bought the materials on Amazon is not the person who should be doing suturing.
Yeah. Okay, hold still now.
Butterflies are extremely simple.
Yeah.
Roller gauze. Roller gauze. You can stop, take a Stop the Bleed course.
Okay.
Suturing, no. Don't. If you're going to suture, and this is what I hear a lot too, and then I'll get off my rant on suturing. People say, well, I want to learn it just in case when SHTF. Okay. SHTF isn't going to last forever. And what happens if you do something wrong and you wind up killing your patient or making them worse?
Right.
What's the statute of limitations in the medical world for being able to sue somebody who caused you harm? For example, on the ambulance, anytime we had a birth call where a lady was pregnant and about to give birth, we have to keep those records for 21 plus 7 years. So 28 years we have to keep those records because at any point up to their 28, they can come back and sue us for a birth defect or something that may have happened to that child. They can come back and sue us. 28
that's a long time.
years. So you may think, oh, well, we'll look at Venezuela. That's not going to happen. That's not going to be over anytime soon. It might be
28
over.
years, though, is a long time, yeah.
It might be over in 6 months. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. We can't predict the future. Yeah. So there's things that may come a year, 2 years later, and now all of a sudden, the government's been reestablished, law and order's been and it's life as we know it. And then now you're getting sued because you wanted to be the dun-dun-dun and suture somebody who didn't need it, caused the hematoma, or caused, any number of things. And now they have permanent injury because you wanted to play Superman or Supermedic.
Right. Yeah.
Just keep to the basics.
Well, that's fine with me because it's something I didn't want to learn anyway. Man, my mom's an upholsterer, so sewing, she always gives me a hard time about sewing because she's so good at it, And I'm like, suturing's way too close to sewing. I'm good with that. We'll just put some butterfly Band-Aids on there. I mean,
keep it
you're
simple.
going to be good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm also a fan of letting stuff drain, so I've had a lot of cats and dogs and stuff like that. And anytime you can get them to open up an abscess and just let that thing roll, you're not paying a vet bill. Right?
Well, true. Plus, you have to think about pain control because if you're an advocate for your patient, which is what you should be as a medical provider, do no harm. do you have a method to administer pain control?
Right.
Pain control are typically narcotics. What's your access to narcotics? You can buy some over the counter that are topical, but they're only good for certain things.
Right.
You try giving somebody a topical to treat a boil, and you're only, hitting about maybe that much skin, and the boil goes down that deep into their body. Trust me, they're going to feel it, and they're not going to be happy. And you can only use the SHTF excuse for so many things before it's like, no, that has no bearing on the situation. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, you need to learn how to really do this.
Doctors don't magically get on a special boat because SHTF and disappear. They're still around. You may not know where to find them because you're not in their office. But if you do your planning and you make friends with some doctors, and now you know how to get a hold of them and maybe even bring them into your circle.
Yeah.
Now that's an additional
resource. Or maybe
resource.
they're in your community and they weren't planning as much as you were, and they could really use some food, and you could really use their help.
Exactly.
And that's a great
so that
trade-off.
Goes back in the planning phase. Say, hey, what are we short on? What do we need? Hey, we don't have any nurses or paramedics or EMTs. Hey, but my cousin's a doctor. Cool.
Yeah.
There's ways to get help. Yeah,
right?
even if he doesn't, even if he's a non-preparedness person, hey, if we ever need you, can we call you if things are really bad? In return, we can provide you with food, water, anything that you might need. We'll barter.
Whatever. Yeah.
And most people are open to bartering. Hey, something for something.
Yep.
So
actually, it's becoming a lot more prevalent now. I've noticed. I had tons of stuff because I got my chicken farm, So I trade eggs for all kinds of stuff nowadays. I'm like, dude, I got duck eggs, chicken eggs. Oh, farm fresh eggs. Okay. I'm like,
I'll be over in 5 minutes.
All right,
Where we go?
Game on. Yep. So yeah, there's definitely avenues. You just got to open up your mind a little bit, I think. So.
And
so the other thing.
Go ahead.
What about breaking bones? So.
Again, for a basic first aid course, we'll show you how to take care of a fracture. Even if it's in the old school, used to be called a compound fracture.
Right. That's
now
what I'm
it's called an open fracture where the bone is sticking through the skin. Do you need to apply traction? What bone is it?
Right.
Is it the femur? So now do you have a way to apply traction if you have a femur break?
Yeah, just stretch it so that you can put it back together. Because man, that can screw you forever.
But now you need to also know if you're going to apply traction, can you apply or should you apply traction to an open fracture or only a closed fracture? You need to know the differences and why. Yep. So that goes back to planning and the training and the practice. And you don't need a whole bunch of high-speed tools. You can do a makeshift one with some rope and a couple sticks. But knowing the why behind it, when to or when not to apply a specific treatment, and that's by training and learning constantly from reputable sources. Go to an instructor, pay $50 for a basic first aid class, maybe $100 for an advanced first aid class, and then practice it.
Yeah.
Go to your local ambulance squad and ask them if they have any stuff that they're going to be getting rid of because it's expired. We used to give away expired stuff all the time.
Oh,
I kept the majority of it because it was expired, but I could still use it in training.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd have it for all my training courses. I would use it to, when I was bored and had nothing else to do.
That's a great idea.
Which happened all the time. But I had stuff that I can use for training. Just, hey, we haven't done this in a year and a half, and it's been a long time since I've learned it. I should probably, just in case I ever need to use it, let me sit down for half an hour and watch it while I'm watching a movie on TV and just go over it. And
that makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a great idea. I never even thought about that. But yeah, what do they do with all their old stuff that they haven't used yet? Yeah. And as long as it's not anything that's, narcotic or anything like that. Yeah. That's an awesome idea.
And that's another way to get into your local EMS agency. Hey, you show up for a couple months, hey, every month you go there. Anything you got, you're throwing away we could use. Thank you. You build a relationship. Now they're an additional resource. They may not be, wanting to get into your mag or but they're an additional, hey, can I call you for a question I have, or do you offer any training? Can we come and help out? Can we play victim in your other training? Because playing a victim, you'll learn stuff just by being a victim. Because you'll watch the interactions, you'll learn, hey, this is what they did wrong, this is what they did right. Because at the end, they always have an after-action report, and they go over, okay, this worked out great, you did awesome here, this you got to work on, you totally forgot this, or whatever critique they're giving, but normally you can be watching in on that and listening and absorbing all of that, and which helps you learn.
And it helps them. They've got people now to help them with their activities and things like that. So everything,
So now you're a resource to them, they're a resource to you. It all works out. And again, it's that whole something for something.
Mutual goodness, I guess.
Yep.
So, okay, how about moving people? So we always talk about the stretcher and, of course, how to put somebody on a stretcher and stuff. But, like, if you're seriously, like, bugging out or something like that and you have somebody go down with the blister and you need to move them, efficiently, and you don't really – what would you recommend? I mean, if they're light enough, I guess you could backpack them, but then somebody's got to carry your backpack,
So I like to keep it simple. Can they walk? If they can walk, let them walk.
When they're on their own.
If they can move, let them move.
Yeah. So
if they need help them out how you can. Now, if you're talking about the elderly who may be bedbound or need a wheelchair or a walker.
Or can't go as far, just as long, as you can.
You need to make accommodations for them. You have two options. You can either leave them behind, or if they're a family or that's not an option, your traveling distance is limited by your slowest member. And if it means you can only travel a mile a day because you have to spend so much time and resources helping this other person, then you're going to go about a mile a day. And then you got to plan on that.
Yeah, that sucks. I'm gonna have to get my mom walking more.
Or you can have some.
She's small enough I can throw her in her backpack, but
this is one more thing in your group
take care.
To plan for. Hey, is there a way? Is there something we can buy, build, or think
like
about?
A cart type system.
So if this were to happen, how can we accomplish this task? Hey, my grandmother is 98 years old. She weighs 98 pounds. She can't walk. She's bedbound. We need to get her from point A to point B. How do we do that most efficiently, effectively, and without causing her any grief or as little grief as possible? How can we do that?
Right.
Think about
that's
it.
been one of my concerns because I'm like, man, my son is 7. He's a pretty good trooper. He can go for a while, but with the pack on him, I don't know. And then, other family members, and it's like, even though I'm ripping strong, it's like, I don't know. What am I going to do to get all these people moved,
So that goes back into your planning phase and identify your needs, identify the high-risk areas, the higher-risk people, identify whatever might be a problem before it ever gets to that point, and try and figure out how to mitigate that problem so that and then practice it. Right.
Right.
So
if you throw injury on top of that, like somebody gets injured along the way, now you got another one.
This is where training scenarios come into play. So when you get together to do training, shake it up. Don't always go out on a nice bright Saturday. Wait until it's Saturday night and snowing or raining like crazy and really miserable, and do it then. Because like I said before, accidents don't happen when it's always nice out. When it's the most miserable. That's typically when Mr. Murphy steps in and says,
I was just going to say.
Right about now, be a good time. Bam!
For you guys to get screwed. There you go.
We had in the military, this saying has been going on since God made dirt. If it ain't raining, we ain't training.
You're not training.
Because we would train in all conditions. Because think about it. You have to be ready in any condition. You can't always pick and choose when something's going to happen.
And if you train in the worst conditions, then if it happens in the good conditions, then,
it's
that's like,
at least it's not snowing outside. Cool, we can do this. We got this.
This is easy.
Yep.
All right, so let's just touch back a little bit on some of the very basics of what we should know. So we should definitely assessment, how to document what's going on, And then just you're talking about like light wounds, burns, and things like that are our most common injuries that we're going to need to be prepared to handle.
Mm-hmm.
Any more for the basics that you think we should really include on the list of like minor injuries we should really be ready for?
Well, stop the bleed.
Mm-hmm.
So learning how hemorrhage control, learning all the different methods for hemorrhage control. Basic first aid. I mean, there's any city you go to is going to have 50 people or 50 places you can go to learn basic first aid, including hospitals. A lot of times hospitals put a class on. So, don't be afraid to go to the local hospital.
Basic first aid usually has CPR, like choke, if people are choking, stuff like that, how to clear airways.
Well, typically CPR like that, right? is its own course, and then basic first aid is its own course. A lot of times they'll offer both of them either under one umbrella or back to back. So, hey, you're going to come for 8 hours. We're going to do CPR first, and then have a break, and then go into basic first aid, or combine them. But typically CPR is separate.
What's in basic first aid? What do they run through in there?
Wound, stop the bleed or hemorrhage control, choking, your basic assessment. Broken bones, moving people. Somebody fell and their arm is in a really twisted, unnatural position. Do you want to move them? How to tell, hey, can I move this arm to put it back and it's natural? Well, what happens if you move it wrong? Motion. Are you going to do more damage?
Gotcha.
How to check for that, when not to move somebody like that. So all your basic kind of first aid stuff. Advanced first aid gets into a little bit more. You're going to learn a little bit more. You're going to learn the basics again, but then everything builds on that. So it's all pretty much basic.
Even though it's called advanced first aid. Learn how to go even farther with it.
Right. They get more deeper into some areas. They introduce different techniques. You learn why you want to lay on the left side, not the right side when you put somebody in a recovery position. You learn a little bit more about the anatomy and why that's important. So it's a really good course to go through. Even if one person goes through it and takes that back and covers the highlights with their group, you're good to go.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like either, have the whole group goes and does it together, or have just one and go and bring it back. And then when you have the people who are going to be your advanced medics in your group, what level of training do you think they should attain for that type of role?
Well, they should probably already know that. If they've gone through the progression, you learn,
like
here's
paramedics.
where I am.
They're currently paramedics now or something like that.
So they're paramedics now. There's a ton of courses they can go through, and most of them know what they are.
Yeah.
If they want to. And I always advocate for somebody going through a wilderness first aid or a wilderness first responder course, not just because I teach them, but because you learn a lot that's still at the basic level that's not included in most other courses that can benefit tons of different scenarios and situations and environments. And a lot of that, again, is planning. You plan and learn how to avoid potential injuries, which is key out in the wilderness.
Know what the potential injuries are before you get there, and then be ready to handle them before they come up.
Yeah, a lot of it is when you hear someone say, "Here, hold my beer," you can step in and say, "Whoa, stop, no."
Yeah, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, and you can typically head it off before the words "hold my beer" even are a thought in their brain. Mitigate that risk before it even becomes a risk. So,
no, we're not holding. Just sit down with your beer and relax.
Yep, Come down there, Sparky. Take a nap.
Fair enough. Alrighty, Kevin. Well, I like what we've covered because, like I said, it's really hard when you're on, the airwaves to be like, okay, this is how you do everything specifically. But I think my personal feeling, because I'm like so prepared in so many other ways, and I'm just like, what happened to my medical stuff? Yeah, I took an EMT class. Well, come on, I was like 15 years ago, So if you don't practice it right, it just slips. And it's about having that group you can get together. And sometimes it's tough to even find people that will participate. So having that knowledge of you could go up to your local EMS place and, volunteer, things like that. At least you're getting the practice and the knowledge to maintain it, even if you can't find anyone to do it with you. So
and even college
great
campuses, ideas. Some colleges have their own groups.
The EMT, well, that's where I took my EMT course, was in college, so I mean,
but some colleges have their own ambulance squad made up of students who have like a more permanent person as maybe their chief or the administrator or whatever, but the squad is made up of students. So,
that's cool.
You have to find out what's in your area.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I don't like to say think outside the box, because it implies putting yourself in a box to begin with. So I don't believe in limiting myself and then trying to unlimit myself. But don't think, in a straight line. Try and think about all the different ways, all the different places there might be a resource, and then exploit them to their full potential.
Yeah, excellent. Alrighty, well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Why don't you give everybody your website one more time, and that way they can head over and find out about your great, I know you got a project coming up, and I don't want to say anything, but all kinds of good stuff. So give that out, and then they can keep tracks on what's going on.
So my website is wildsafety.com. That's the Wilderness Safety Institute. Wildsafety.com. All my contact information, social media is on there. I've got a Facebook group. And if you hit my website and you want to keep in the know of the super secret squirrel project that's going to be coming out somewhere around Christmas, January, get on the mailing list. And because if you're on the mailing list, you will get first shot at the course along with a discount before it's publicly announced. And you'll have lifetime access to it, including any updates and any other thing I add to it. And that'll all be announced later on the mailing list. But if you're not on the mailing list, you'll never know, and you're going to miss out and be really mad. And
be like, oh, I should have done it when I heard it on the Changing Earth podcast. Darn it.
And I will be announcing a number of ways that you can. I'm planning out the special offers. I don't want to call them discounts, but there's special offers targeted to certain groups, like your podcast listeners, for example. So when it comes out, after it's been through the initial VIP launch and it goes public, anybody who's a listener of your podcast, use a special code and they'll get a special access.
Special offer. Nice.
Not a discount, a special offer.
A special offer.
That's
I feel
right.
so special.
Spatial.
Spatial. All righty, Kevin. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciated having you on.
Thank you for having me back. I can talk. Thank you for having me back, sir. I really appreciate it. And
you bet. We got another season coming up soon, so
I'm here, and I just finally got moved into my new apartment. As you can probably see, some boxes somewhere in the background. I've only been here a week, and I'm just getting unpacked. So once I get a little more stable, I will be looking for your box set so I can read all at one shot, do a weekend read, and get finally caught up on what's current.
So I got to do the box set eventually, but the problem is I keep writing more books, and then everybody's like, is this going to be the last one? I'm like, oh, yeah. Yeah, this is going to be the last one for sure. And then I'm like,
until tomorrow.
Well, maybe it's not going to be the last one, because now the story just went boom, So I'm like, okay, well, eventually I'll be done. We'll put it in a box set for everyone. So, excellent.
Well, I'll still go and because my problem is that if I buy them now, I won't get any work done.
Yep.
So get the work done first, and then I can binge read over next weekend or the next weekend. Yeah. Plus the podcast. Yep.
Yep. So, alrighty. Well, thank you.
Thanks again, Sarah. Take care, y'all. See you soon.
All right. Thanks so much, Kevin, for coming on the show. I always appreciate your time and your energy. It was great to have you here. So much information, so much learning to do in the area of emergency preparedness medicine. And what I found most interesting was, there's so much focus on learning how to do sutures. And most of the time, whether it's Dr. Ryan Chamberlain that I have on my show or Dr. Alton that I have on my show, most of the time they advise to not close things down. And that's because of the risk of infection, So how important is suturing really to learn? Not very, like Kevin says, it's more of a aesthetic thing, and you can just learn butterflies. So how many of us have wasted our time learning the skill when we could be focused on other things? So great to have Kevin on the show. Really appreciate that input. Once again, I want to thank all my Patreon supporters. You guys are really what makes the show go round. You guys are what's keeping it on the air right now. So if you would like to go over there and become a Patreon supporter, you can do so at www.patreon.com/changingearth. That's www.patreon.com/changingearth. I've got all kinds of goodies and rewards, and I'm constantly presenting new information for my Patreon members. And you also get access to the Las Vegas years that I'm writing. You can look forward to a new part of that coming out probably a couple months because I'm really tied up with a lot of projects right now. But I'm always bringing out bonus audio and all kinds of cool gifts like that. So plus you can get signed up to get the brand new books to the Changing Earth series as soon as they're issued. So you don't have to wait for any of that. And I would always do that as a pre-release. If you sign up for the paperback books, you get those signed. I can't sign an ebook, so that's kind of tough, but you get those signed copies mailed out to you wherever you are in the world. So I really appreciate everybody who's over there supporting me right now. And if you find it in your heart to go over and become a supporter, I would super appreciate that. And you can do so at www.patreon.com/changingearth. Thank you guys all for listening. It's been a great show. I just love, coming into the end of the books is so much fun. And then it's always fun opening up the new book and getting rolling on the new mission. So I'm laying down a lot of audio right now. I'm trying to update A Day After Disaster because I redid that book. And so I'm trying to update that audiobook right now. And then also get started on the audiobook for Dark Days in Denver. So lots to do, and I'm still writing and training and doing all that stuff. And the kids are going back to school. So, life's just hippity hopping and we're just rolling with the punches. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen and educate your mind and be entertained by my stories. Until next time, remember, dream, survive, thrive.
Thank you for joining Sara for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster, Without Land, The Walls of Freedom, and Battle for the South at www.author.sarafhathaway.com. If you love Sara's books and this podcast, please head over to Amazon or iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.